Hello, this is Coach Henry with Greenville Public Schools. Today I'm going to try to give you guys a quick preview to the IXL program. Make sure you guys know how to get started, and then I'll come back later with more videos to help you work on the actual math within the program. First, we're going to go to IXL.com. This is where the program is located. You're going to need to type in your username, which is probably a last name, first initial, at that last name first initial will match what your Google account, your GPS provided Google account is for students. So except for it won't finish at gpsmi.us. Here it finishes at Greenville MS, Greenville Middle School. And then your password also matches that at GPS account that the GPS has already given students to log into their Chromebooks and such. So you're going to type in whatever your password was there, which is usually some word followed by 123. Okay, you'll log in, and it should show you your name up in the corner there. And then the two tabs that we're going to focus on most is this Analytics tab. We'll come back to in a little bit because it records every question you've answered, whether you've got it right or wrong, and you can start to dig through your details and find your mistakes there. To get started, we're going to click on the Math tab over here. In the Math tab, topics are sorted by various grades, where the Common Core recommends the content into those grades, and then it's also sorted by certain topics. Okay. The recommendations is built off of the grades piece, so if you click on recommendations, it's going to make you choose a grade. What's good about the recommendations is if I start with third grade, it gives you a preview of what kind of questions are there. And if I scroll through this, there's 20 or 30, but tens of recommendations. That's kind of a highlight of third grade. And that's a good place to explore the big ideas if you feel like you kind of got lost in third grade. You can go back and start to explore those. If we go into the grades and I pick third grade, you would see that there is hundreds of overall skills there to explore. Getting back to those highlights, at the top of the grade you see recommended skills. That's going to take you into those highlights. You're going to pick the grade level and it'll give you those highlights again. As far as topics, I plan on starting with some topics and kind of doing the same thing. If I click on topics, for instance, multiplication, which maybe starts in second and has a lot of focus in third grade. If I click on multiplication, there are hundreds of skills in multiplication. You'll see it starts with second grade. It lists multiplication skills through various grades, all the way up through some more multiplication stuff they're still doing in high school in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. So what I'm going to try to do is, if instead of saying I got lost in third grade, as many students or teachers feel multiplication is a topic that is holding them back from success, then I'm going to be putting out a design of what are some of these multiplication topics we can put in here, and maybe some instruction about how you might work with multiplication to build through multiplication, kind of overview of the third, fourth, and fifth grade skills that come together for multiplication, and see if we can't fix that topic for students. The way we're focusing on using IXL is to work on skills that have already been taught and kind of recover and fill in some of those gaps. So that's the focus of instruction that I'm building with IXL. It doesn't mean that our advanced students can't use IXL to explore some topics in future grades and kind of play around and just generally get better. But most of the help that I'm going to provide is going to be working on filling in gaps that are preventing students from doing well in their classrooms. I'm not necessarily trying to focus on skills that students need at that time to take the test. We're going to look at skills that students need to fill in so that they can catch up to the class and get the most out of class while we're there. Okay. With that in mind, I'm going to pick a skill. So I'll start in third grade. We'll talk about making arrays to model multiplication. So one of the first things when we first work on multiplication, what does it mean? So 3 times 5, we think of 3 groups of 5. The array model would be that you would have 3 rows, each with 5 in them. Okay, so that's a 3 by 5 area. And that's what they're hoping you know to do in this concept. So if I get that first one right, Notice it gave me 10 points over here. That's pretty typical through the skills. Not always, but typically your first question right is worth 10 points. And as you move forward, the points are worth less and less. So if I make this next one, I'm actually going to change the orientation of the array. So it says 2 by 4. I'm going to do 2 columns with 4 in each row, just to kind of test the program to see if it'll accept doing a little bit different idea there. 2 by 4, you see it still covers 8 squares, so that's modeling multiplication. 2 groups of 4 is 8. You see this time it only gave me 9 points. The correct answers are generally worth a few less points as you work your way up, to the point where you get into the 90s and probably you only get 1 point for each answer correct. In the beginning, when I make mistakes, it only takes off a couple points. So right now this says 4 times 5 equals 20. If I didn't understand multiplication, I might be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, then do another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I try to click on that. I got something wrong. Notice it only took off 2 points here. As I get further into this topic, towards the end, it might take off 6 or 7 points. And basically that's saying when you get close to mastery, you want to reliably be getting them correct. So getting one wrong every couple times means you're not that close to mastery. So it'll kind of let you plateau with a SMART score of like 60 or 70. If you get to that 100, the program's designed to say, yes, you really understand that topic. So, and I'll talk a little bit about how to work with that score in a second here. But when you get a wrong answer, what I want you to show is first tells you what the correct answer would have been. All right. Then it shows you what was the question you had and how did you answer it, so you can see what you did. Give some helpful hints. Arrays are made up of rows, and the rows need to have the same length. So array of 3 by 4 would look like this. So 3 rows, 1, 2, 3 by 4. So it kind of gives you an instructional, this is what this is supposed to look like. Now with your specific problem, an array of 4 by 5 should have had 4 rows, so they count up the 4 rows for you by 5 squares in each row. So showing you how you got 4 by 5, which means that there's 20 total squares for you to count in there. If you understand the explanation, you click Got It, and you move on to the next question. It gives you another chance. Okay. Now, when students are working on content that they understand, typically they'll master it in about 30 questions. If it's just something they knew from before and they're just kind of doing that background check. Students who learn from their mistakes, who take their time when they make mistakes and study what we just looked at, I would say it might take them up to 50. If it's a new concept that they kind of get a chance with, they get some right, they get some wrong, they learn from their mistakes. Somewhere between 30 and 50 is usually when I see students master a concept in IXL. When I start seeing students go over 50 questions, that's a clue to me that they may not be learning from their mistakes. And that's where learning happens, is focusing on your mistakes. Typically what happens in that case is a student gets up into, say, somewhere in the 70s, and they make a mistake, which brings them back down into the 60s. They get an easier question, they get a couple right, they get back up in the 70s, that same kind of question pops up, they get it wrong, drop back down, and I see kids cycle in this endless loop of, when I get it wrong, it gives me an easier question, so I get it right, but then eventually it's going to ask me that same kind of question. And if I haven't learned from my mistake, I keep making it. And I've seen students who will cycle through this up into 400, 500, 600 questions on a topic before they decide they want to look at their mistakes. And that's, I guess, kind of a place where I have to let students be until they're ready for help. It's hard to help. So that help is going to come from actually figuring out that mistake. So as you help your child at home, that might be a good thing to notice, is how many questions have they answered, and is their SMART score going up? Okay. With that in mind, how would I use the program at home? I would recommend letting students work for 20 or 30 minutes at a time. I wouldn't suggest going much more than that, just because I think at that point we start to see frustration. They're forcing themselves to get to 100 and get something done that they might not be ready for, and I'd rather them focus at that point on what questions do I need to ask to move on to the next level, kind of summarize what have I done so far, and I'd rather see students come back again the next day kind of with an open mind, ready to learn some more, rather than working into that point of frustration. So if we could set up a routine of doing 20 or 30 minutes 3 or 4 times a week, I think we could see a lot of growth using this program. I mentioned the analytics tab. If you start to see students answering lots of questions, if you see your child has done 60 questions or something like that, 60, 70 questions, and they're not using paper, you might click on this analytics tab, and for students, it'll have a question log. For me, it's going to go over, I can pick a student and see what they've done, but for your student, it should take you right down to seeing which questions have they answered and did they get it right or wrong. And then you could kind of look at, okay, let's write down all the questions we got wrong. Is there something in common? What's that mistake that we're looking at? Can we figure out that mistake? So that's how I would use the analytics tab to help. If you have any further questions, my email is henryj@greenville.k12.mi.us, and I would love to help you use this program well and see our students fill in some of these gaps and really have access to the challenges and the exploration that's happening in their core classroom. Good luck, and thank you for listening.